Welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss, episode 21. Today I get to sit down with the lead singer of one of my favorite bands of all time. This group has won Grammy Awards, they've won CMA Awards, they've won ACM Awards, and they've been out there rocking for over 30 years. It is my great honor to welcome the lead singer of the Kentucky Headhunters, Mr. Doug Phelps. All right, welcome to After School with Mr. Van Huss. It is my great pleasure to welcome Doug Phelps from the Kentucky Headhunters. Doug, how you doing this evening?
We're doing good, man. Just as Loretta Lynn used to say, just sitting around trying to matter. No, we're doing good, man. We 38 years into the headhunter existence, and we still get to tour and make records, and we love what we do, so we're very fortunate.
Well, it's so awesome. I've been listening to you guys for probably over 3 decades now, so I'm very thankful to get the chance to talk to you, and I've been a long-time fan of your all's music.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Starting out, I've been doing this show for my students just to talk to some people that have found success doing things that they love and just getting a little bit of their story and things like that. So I'll start out, easy question. What influenced you to do what you do? What made you want to sing and play bass guitar?
Well, our family, the Phelps family, all the way back to even great uncles, everybody played. It was like in it was the musical DNA. It was just in us, you know. And all Grandma and Grandpa Phelps, they wrote songs and wrote poems and played guitar. My dad played guitar, and wrote poems and songs about most of his life as well. And he's a preacher, similar guy, preacher. It's like I felt like that's what I was supposed to do, you know, but it came naturally to me. Even at 5 or 6 years old, Dad was already starting to teach me, you know, a sneaky way to make a G because my hand wouldn't fit all the way around the neck. But it was just in us. That's the best way I know to describe it. And as I grew older and started teaching myself how to play, I listened to a lot of music, and we had a lot of different music. Dad was a huge Glenn Miller fan. He just missed World War II. He served in Korea, but he was a huge Glenn Miller big band, you know, fan. And so obviously I listened to a lot of that growing up. My brother's 7 years older than I am, and he was with the Headhunters too. After the four of us that are still doing it right now, the original founding members, we brought Ricky in sometime later, and he was on the first 2 records with us. But him being older, he was listening to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and Steppenwolf and ZZ Top and, you know, all these great early and Black Oak, Arkansas, which was we grew up in the Boot Heel of Missouri, and Black Oak, Arkansas was about 35 miles from our hometown. So when they came out, you know, guns blazing, so to speak, that was somebody who was real close to home. So they were a big influence as well. So all the influences, kind of permeated my existence during that time as I was continuing to learn and teach myself how to play and sing. And I started writing songs and early poems as well. And so it was just kind of a family thing at first. And then all those outside influences really kind of spurred it on, you know.
So who were your heroes? Like, who did you want to be like when you first started playing music?
Well, you know, really for me, I guess as a kind of coming to age moment in music, it really was the Beatles for me. Now, don't get me wrong, Dad was also a huge Hank Sr. and Ernest Tubb. He loved, you know, the old country music as well. So that was an influence to me as well. But when the Beatles happened, my brother, again, 7 years older than I was, he had his Beatle records and told me never to play them when he was not at the house. And so what did I do? When he wasn't at the house, I played his Beatle records. And we had an old hardwood floor in the living room of the house. We lived there in the Boot Heel, Missouri. And a little stereo, you know, 2 little stereo speakers. And I'd lay on the floor, on that hardwood floor, and put them speakers on each side of my head and play those Beatle records. And man, it just took me somewhere when I listened to them. And so they were probably the biggest influence early, but my goodness, you know, Dad being a preacher, we on Sunday mornings, we'd have the Jubilee on TV before we went to church, and the Florida Boys and the Happy Goodmans and all that kind of stuff as well. So that Southern gospel quartets kind of sound was also, the harmonies. I loved harmonies, and so that also played a role in, I guess, in my musical development. But it's just a musical stew of a lot of different genres and a lot of different influences that kind of, that it goes in, and then when it comes back out, it you hope you can take it somewhere.
Now, did you do any music in high school or anything? And did you do did you guys go to college, or did you go straight into being like a touring musician first off?
Well, of course, I played in church.
Hmm.
That was really where I cut my teeth. I played acoustic guitar, and then my uncle Dub, who is my dad's just younger brother, was the first professional musician. Everybody played, but he's the one who actually went out and made a living playing music, and was also a studio session player, and then toured as well. So he was a big influence, and he gave me my first bass guitar when I was 10. And so I started playing bass in church as opposed to acoustic. And of course, I played a little bit of piano as well from time to time. But, I've about lost my train of thought there. Repeat the question again. I get on a tangent sometimes. So.
I understand. What your education was like, and did you go straight into touring?
Did I play through? Yes. Playing in church was really the first thing. But then my first little folk rock band, I was at a middle school, had a little 3-piece band, and we played some school functions, and we played some little town functions as well. In high school, then I got basically into a Southern rock band, and we had a weekly meeting out on an old farmhouse. One of the guys that was the guitar player they had their family farm, and he had an old farmhouse on the river. So we'd get out there, people would come out and hang out, and then we went out and played a little bit with that band as well. I did some solo acoustic stuff through school, playing spring concerts and stuff like that as well, and FFA and FHA Sweetheart Banquet and stuff like that. But I did go to college. The other thing that I had a natural ability for was, I mentioned my daughter playing basketball earlier before we started this. I was a good basketball and baseball player as well. And so I went to Arkansas State after I graduated. And just before that, I had met a guy named Craig Morris from Paragould, Arkansas. He was only about 12 miles from my hometown of Cardwell, Missouri. And he was dating one of my classmates, and she introduced us because he's a piano player and a songwriter. And so from 11th grade and 12th grade, we did some things together as well. And then we were roommates in college, and we did a college talent contest type of thing as well. And then we got invited to be on Debbie Rockefeller of the Rockefeller fame. Had a show she was putting together called Illusions, and it was featuring Arkansas talent, and we ended up invited to be a part of that show as well. So we did some things in college as well. I was going to be a coach. I figured I make it in the music business is really hard. It's really hard. There's a lot of talented people that never get that chance, never get that shot, that certainly are good enough and deserve to. But I figured I can be a coach. I can teach. I can be a coach and still do something that I love to do, and I'll always be able to play music. Well, Craig ended up. There was our sophomore year at ASU, Arkansas State University in Jonesboro, Arkansas. There was a traveling Opryland audition type thing. They were looking for people to play when Opryland was still, a music and theme park. Yeah. And he auditioned, and he got the job playing piano in the 50 show at Opryland. And this would have been the summer of '81. And so this would be going in. He left, and I stayed. And so I was in my 5th semester. I was starting my junior year in college. And I got a call from him that October of '81. and saying that he had ended up through somewhere out there at Arborland, ended up with Ronnie McDowell, who is a country music artist who was having #1 records, and he, was doing very well. And so he called me up and said, Ronnie's looking for a bass player who can sing, and are you interested? Well, I'm a 20-year-old kid. Craig and I had worked a lot together. I said, absolutely, I'm interested. So I went over and auditioned in October of '81 and ended up getting the job with Ronnie. And so I dropped out of college and went straight on the road, and we were doing TV shows and, just like you're talking about jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. It was a rude awakening, but I got to do something that I really wanted to do. And so it really was kind of a dream come true that it worked out that way. And one little connection, that's a Headhunter connection, our lead guitar player, Greg Martin, they had Greg and Richard and Fred, all those, our guys here, had played music off and on together from 1968 till 1980. And they got close to a couple of record deals and they fell through. And so everybody split. Greg ended up auditioning for Ronnie the same day I did because Ronnie wanted a second guitar player. And the horn player, Greg knew the horn player that was leaving. So that's how Greg and I ended up connecting. And then, of course, years later, how we ended up forming the Headhunters. But, the path that sometimes they're not chosen, sometimes they're presented. And, it's up to you to either, go ahead and head down that way or not. Sometimes you have those choices in life. And I was really glad it worked out the way I did because I continued to play basketball in the men's league here in Hendersonville. I played softball in the spring and the fall. And so I just continued playing sports and then coaching my daughter's travel teams and all that stuff. So I still got to do both those things that I thought I'd be doing one or the other.
That's awesome. So did you have a favorite teacher or a mentor or anybody along the way that kind of pushed you along or showed you some cool stuff?
Well, we our little old school in Cardwell, Missouri, is Cardwell and Arbor, Missouri, that had consolidated back in the '60s, and even with our two little town, my hometown had about 870 people when I was growing up. A lot of farmland down in the Boot Hill, so that's a lot of small rural communities. But we had a lot of those teachers that taught there for 35 years or more, and so one of my very favorite teachers was Miss Lambert, which was our English teacher in high school. And she loved our class. We were, like I say, I had graduated. There was 24 in my graduating class. That's how small we were. And but she loved our class. She was actually due to retire a couple of years before she did. And she told us, I'm going to stay, and I'm going to stay the next 2 years because I want to stay with y'all, and I'll retire when y'all graduate. So we dedicated her annual to her, our school yearbook. She was great. I took English 1, 2, 3, and 4 all the way through with Miss Lambert. She was great.
That's awesome. So you've got the ear of some high school kids. What is one life lesson that you learned that you would pass on to the younger generation?
Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I just mentioned earlier about what you pursue what you love. If that's possible, if you can make a living doing something that you really enjoy doing, that's great advice. Even if it's not $1 million a year or whatever, do something you love, and you'll never work a day in your life, as the old saying goes. But you'll work twice as hard doing it because you enjoy it, and you want it to be right. Sometimes you can make that happen, yourself. And sometimes those opportunities are because you're in it are presented to you. So, you have to make good decisions on those things. And that would be the best advice I could give.
Awesome. So I got one last question for you. I told you I'm a history teacher. When I was probably in like 3rd grade or so, my dad showed me the old Disney Fess Parker and Buddy Ebsen Davy Crockett, King of the Wild Frontier movie. Yes. And I was hooked. I don't know, something about it, just the whole Frontier Superman. I loved it. For my students that are watching this, if you look that movie up on Disney Plus, that's one of the most historically inaccurate movies you'll ever see, because it's based
Right.
way more on like the tall tales and stuff, and him going out and drinking bars to death and all that. But I was hooked on Davy Crockett, and still am to this day. Like, even in my 40s, I'll read any new book that comes out about Davy Crockett. So I had just started getting into country music in the early 90s. And I remember my dad would sit around watching CMT, and like I'd always been a little into country. I remember my parents playing a lot of Alabama, and like my grandfather would play Eddie Rabbitt and Don Williams and Merle Haggard and stuff like that. And I wasn't like a diehard country fan, but then when that 90s era hit, and I started listening to Alan Jackson and Garth Brooks and Sawyer Brown and the Pirates of Mississippi and all that. And then I found out about the Kentucky Headhunters, and I started seeing your all's videos for Dumas Walker and Oh Lonesome Me. And then just right after I'd gotten into it, y'all put out that Electric Barnyard album, and there was the Ballad of Davy Crockett in the most like rockin' awesome version I'd ever heard it. So I was a Headhunters fan for life.
That is great. I love it. I love stuff. I love hearing stories like that. That's wonderful.
So how did you guys decide to record the Davy Crockett theme song?
Well, we were in the process, working on the second album, and we had most of that material was written along the same time that we wrote Picking on Nashville. We sort of just went in order. The Picking on Nashville was kind of the first stuff, but we already had all that other stuff written, basically. And we were kind of known. We write a lot of our own stuff. We play our own. We're very self-contained. We play our own music in the studio. We produce our own records. It's a very self-contained band. But we're known for taking certain older songs and what I call headhunterizing them, making them kind of new, doing them the way, we would do them, which our first single, Walk Softly on This Heart of Mine, was that old Bill Monroe bluegrass tune. And, we did it the way we do it. And of course, that's really what kind of kicked that album in gear in the first place. So it ended up selling us a gold record in record time. And, so we were known for taking these songs like that and putting the headhunter touch to them. So Fred was the one who came up with Davy Crockett, because he always, he wore the coonskin cap.
Yep.
And on a lot of the videos, and he still does to this day, for at least the first 2 or 3 songs before he gets too hot, he'll take it off. And we knew we was going to rock it up, because that's kind of what we do. And so we worked on it and come up with that version, and put it out, had a fun video on it, and had a great time doing that, being silly and just having fun. And it did get us invited on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade that next year, because of doing the song, which that was a cool thing to get to be a part of as well. So anyway, that's kind of how it all came about. Now, by that time we were so controversial on radio, and of course you can see, we're not your traditional country band. We're all country boys. I grew up working on the farm, and Richard and Fred live on their farm. It's been in their farm for generations in Kentucky. So, but our sound was different and raw and kind of more rock, I guess you could say. But we had some, those country sensibilities. And so I don't know, somehow or another, radio finally, by the time we got through that second record, they were kind of country radio, mainstream radio was kind of like, okay, I think we've had enough of y'all. So they, Crockett didn't fare that well on the charts, but the video was the #1 video. And, and it like I said, it got us on the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. So, there you have it. I think there was a running joke there for a while. What does the bear and the Kentucky Headhunters have in common? Davy Crockett killed them both.
That's awesome.
And of course, we just laughed. We thought that was a pretty good joke, actually.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, excuse my cough. I've had like allergies going crazy for like the last week or so. So,
man,
Tennessee this time of year.
It is. We just got off of. We did the Rock Legends cruise. It's our third time to do it. And that was out of Miami on down to Puerto Plata, which is Dominican Republic.
Yeah.
And coming back, Richard was sneezing and eyes watering and everything. So he's been fighting it. my wife went on this particular cruise with us, and she's been fighting it for the last 2 or 3 days as well. So I know it's that time of year already.
It is, and the trees are going to bloom. I know any day, and it'll just be killing us all.
Oh yeah,
in a week or two.
Oh yeah, it'll get that. That's when it'll get to me as well.
Absolutely. Well, Doug, thank you so much for giving me a little of your time tonight, and I appreciate you so much taking the time to talk to me. Like I said, I've been a long-time fan of you guys, and I'm sure I always will be. So it's a real honor to get to talk to you for a few minutes, and I appreciate it greatly.
Well, I appreciate you asking, and we'll do it again at some point.
That sounds great, man. Thank you so much for staying after school with Mr. Van Huss.
Right on. Y'all take care.
You too, man. See you later.
Bye-bye.